Back here. Welcome to this week's REI weekly lesson. Today I'm going to talk about novations. What is a novation? How do you use them? When do they make sense? When do they not make sense? So if you're curious about what a novation is, whether you're new or you're established, hopefully this video helps. And before I get started, if you're not familiar with me, I've done well over 175 properties. I've been a full-time real estate investor ever since I got out of college. Actually, I started the business in college, so this is the only thing I've ever done professionally. So I got a lot of experience, done a bunch of different deals. So hopefully you get value from this video or podcast and it can help you in your business, whether you're new or whether you're established. So novation, what is a novation? This has been popular for the last 2 years. All a novation is it's literally, to explain it in the simplest terms, it's basically a wholesale deal to a retail buyer, right? That's all it is. So a typical wholesale deal, like if you're not novating, is you go into contract with a seller for a certain price. Your contract is allowed to be assigned, and you assign your contract to a cash buyer, whether they're legit cash or they're getting hard money or private money. And the way that you make money is you assign your contract to them for an assignment fee. So you assign your contract to the other buyer for $25,000, and the way that you make money is via an assignment fee, right? That's an assignment. A novation is the same concept, but the way that you make money is different. The way that you do the novation is, instead of assigning your contract to the buyer, you actually get paid to cancel your contract with the seller. So the way that that works is you sign a purchase and sale contract with a seller. In that purchase and sale contract, it's allowed to be novated, which just means replaced with a new contract. And the way that you get paid is actually from the seller, believe it or not the buyer. So this might get a little confusing. So I'll just kind of walk you through what this looks like from a logistical standpoint. So let's say you find a seller that wants to sell their property at a reasonable price, and the house isn't too beat up. It's in mortgageable condition, which means that a consumer can get a mortgage on the property. Because if the property is really screwed up, this is not going to work very well. So property can get a mortgage on it because it's not too beat up, and the seller wants to sell it at sort of a discount, but they're not going to give you the property. You would sign a purchase and sale with the seller, and then in that purchase and sale, there's language in there that says you can novate the contract. So you go out, and it also lets you list it on the MLS before you close. That's super important. You go out, you tell this to the seller, you tell them that you're selling it to someone else, you're making a profit, it's going to be on the market. You got to be super, super transparent with these sellers if you're going to novate. And then what you do is you go out, you actually get an attorney in fact signed. That's probably the easiest document, and that allows you to list the property on the seller's behalf. That has to happen, or else you're not going to be able to do this legally. And this is not legal advice, by the way. I'm not an attorney. And then you're going to go out, you're going to list the house for sale. You're going to be the seller who's on the MLS, not the actual seller. I know this is a little confusing. You're going to find a buyer, hopefully. And what you're going to do now in terms of the logistics is you're going to sign another document with the seller that's called a novation agreement. That's basically an agreement that says you're canceling your contract with the seller, and the new buyer is going to sign a brand new contract with the seller, and you're still in the middle. So the way that you're going to make the actual profit is there's going to be a surplus of funds at closing. So the new buyer is going to get a mortgage. Let's say you're buying it for $250 and you're selling it for $300. Okay. That new buyer is going to get a mortgage, and the mortgage company is going to send in $300,000 at the closing. Okay. The seller is going to get $250. And then you, in the middle, you're going to gross 50, but by the time you pay commissions and everything and closing costs, you're probably going to walk away with like 30, right? And then the seller is going to pay that fee to you technically, right? And then, like I said, it's a little confusing, but the way to use novations, right? I just kind of walk you through how it logistically works, is with sellers who are reasonable, but not reasonable enough to give their house away at 50 cents on the dollar. So sometimes sellers, like, let's say your cash offer is like $200K and they want $250, and you know it's worth $300. And in my market, you couldn't buy a house for $250 and sell it for $300 and make money, because by the time you pay for the closing costs and everything, you're going to like break even or lose a little bit of money. So you're able to basically take some of these leads that are sort of motivated but not ultra motivated and still make money on them, because you're going to guarantee the seller a certain net number. And instead of having to buy the house and pay all the closing costs and pay the hard money fees and everything like that, you're basically able to make a spread, because you're never getting on title. You're novating your contract, which means you're replacing your contract with a new contract from the end buyer, and then you're going to make the spread in between. So the benefit to the seller, and a lot of the times it doesn't make sense for the seller. They're just going to list their house on their own. But when you find a seller who just wants to walk away with a certain dollar amount, they don't want to be bothered really, and they're willing to make the property accessible to other buyers. You can turn these leads that you're paying a lot of money for into cash, right? And your marketing can go a lot farther because you don't have to spend more money on marketing. You just work the existing leads you have. So I would not build a business on Novations. I would use Novations as a way to supplement my leads. And let's say out of 100 leads, 10% of those leads are like deals, like cash deals. And then another 5% of them you can novate. Let's say you make $20,000 per novation and you can do an extra 2 deals. I mean, that's an extra 40 grand that you're going to put basically to your bottom line without having to pay more money in marketing. So I think it's a great tool to use. I wouldn't build a business on this. I would use it as a way to supplement the leads you already have, so you can ultimately be more successful and help more sellers, right? Because a lot of the times, you're working with a small fraction of sellers. And if you can novate some of these properties and the seller knows what you're doing, it can be a legitimate win-win scenario. So hopefully this video was helpful. I didn't want to be too confusing. Quick shout out. If you really want to learn novations, I recommend you go talk to my friend Eric Brewer, who has a great training program on this. And he has done thousands of these deals. He's a legitimate expert. He knows this novation strategy like the back of his hand. If you want to check that out, go to brewermethod.com and tell them that Greg Helbeck sent you there, and they might be able to hook you up with a discount or something like that. It's a great training program. It's called brewermethod.com. If you really want to learn novations like inside and out, I really recommend Eric Brewer, my good friend, teaches you how to do that. So this was more of just like an introduction video to Novation. So hopefully you got value from this. If you did, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, like the video. If you're listening to the pod, subscribe to the pod if you're not subscribed, and leave me a review if you can. And then if you're in New York, Reno, Delaware, or San Diego, any of those 4 areas, and you want to do a deal with me, whether you want to novate something or wholesale something, or just sell me a deal if you're a wholesaler, email me greg@velocityhousebuyers.com or send me a message on Instagram at grego37, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.